are those big questions keeping you up at night? And let's talk about why they might be the key to your next breakthrough.
In today's conversation, we're going to dive into how we handle life's big questions and which new ones you might be exploring right now. So, Rose, I've been there. I've had those big, scary questions that are like churning me up inside. I think one of them was, how do I define success, which I talked about in our last video. But the other one for me that I really struggled with for a long time was being content. And I had a mentor say to me, hey, you need to learn how to be content. And I didn't know how to be content and pushing at the same time
Mhm.
because I wanted to be successful, right? I think
Right.
that is totally opposite, right? How can you be content and push at the same time? And what I discovered through battling with those questions, actually very similar to what you said in our last video about learning how to do and. I
Mhm.
can be content and I can still be pushing for more success. What about you?
So one of the things I have struggled with, and I'm still struggling with, but I feel sort of more grounded in, is how to just be, right? And I think it's similar, it's an offshoot to what you're talking about, right? The idea that we have to be in motion all the time, right? Because there's some sort of belief that if you're not in motion, you're doing nothing. And if you're doing nothing, it is harder to get ahead, right? Because sort of every moment of the day, you have got to be able to count for it. And even when I'm tired or weary, I know I need a break. My body tells me I need a break. My mind tells me I need a break. I still struggle with push through because you have this next thing on the list. And I always have lists. So one of the things I've always struggled with is how to recognize that that is just as important as everything else I need to do. Because if I can't rest, I'll burn out. If I don't rest, I'm not as creative. It's harder for me to sort of to move through my life in a more sort of authentic and seamless way if I don't rest. And so I've come to appreciate more and more those times because it's not that I'm doing nothing, it's that I'm mindfully resting, right? I'm mindfully resting. And a lot of times I find that when I'm resting, a lot of ideas come to me that wouldn't come to me because I'm busy sort of just checking off the boxes. And I'm much better with it. I find that I'm actually carving out moments in the day to just allow myself to breathe, really.
Mhm. Rose, I'm so glad that you shared that because often I feel like I'm the only person who struggles with this because like every year when I'm going to take time off, we
Mhm.
have a conversation about it because I'm like, I'm going to take some time off and it's going to be a long time. And why am I doing this? And all of those kind of
And what
questions.
else can I be doing? Like if I, if I was able to do something, and the interesting part is there's a never-ending list, right? Like we
Yes.
could do that, but then there'll never be a time for rest. And I think that is that valuing of the rest, right? We have not been taught to value it.
Yeah, yeah. I know I just came back from Florida because I love to go to Florida when I'm forcing myself to do nothing, right?
Mhm.
And I can honestly tell you, if I go down there for 10 days, the first 4 days, I'm
Mhm.
thinking of things that I have to do
Right.
and thinking of all this stuff, right? And by the fifth day, if I can force myself to be bored, because that's for me, that's what rest feels like. It feels like I'm being bored and I'm being lazy. But if I can force myself to be bored, I start coming up with all of these amazing ideas and my mind just like blooms. It just blooms with all this stuff that I've never even thought about before. So I think that rest is so important. But why do you think that these big questions are so daunting for us to really wrestle with?
I think because ultimately they probably have been churning within us for a while. And when we start feeling when those questions start rising, it feels scary because we don't know what that will mean. oftentimes we're not ready to face it. I think that's probably the most important part. We're not often ready to face it or don't want to face it. And so it feels overwhelming. And a lot of times I think we push it aside. I'll deal with that tomorrow. I'll deal with that tomorrow. So I think that that is, there's a fear about what that means. What will you find out on the other side?
Yeah.
And it may force you, which you may not want to do, to make a change that you kind of know you need to make, but you're scared to make. So if you mindfully choose to delve into that question and lament on it, it may force you to take an action that you really don't want to take, but you know you need to.
Yeah. So kind of like reframing it from being a threatening question to more of an invitation to
Yeah.
discover new possibilities.
Yeah. And that might just be the very thing you need to improve the quality of your life, is the way I would sort of frame it.
Yeah. So for anyone watching, if you're grappling with big, scary
Mhm.
questions, know that uncertainty can be the springboard for self-discovery. So it's okay not to have all the answers yet. It's perfectly okay. The important thing is to actually be wrestling with the question and be thinking about it and working through it. So let's jump into some practical takeaways. Of course, our signature journaling prompt.
Yes.
So grab a notebook, take some time. You can do it right after this video if you'd like. And what's one big question that I'm wrestling with? And how could it point me to a hidden opportunity or a new direction? So just kind of think about that, write about it, and see what answers come up for you. If you want to share, we would love to understand. So maybe you can put your question in the comment section. We would like to know what questions you're wrestling with. Bonus exercise. So staying focused on the big why and the big questions. So you can do an artistic, because I'm an artist, so I love to include things like this. So get out a piece of paper and just doodle. And it doesn't have to be anything artistic. Stick figures are perfectly fine. And the key is just to visualize your question. Maybe it's a question mark floating over a house because you're thinking about, how do I make home? How do I make something feel like home? But just let your image speak, because sometimes I feel like we don't have words,
Yeah. To
but
capture.
doodles and things like that can really come out. So it's a quick way to tap into emotions and insights that you might not reach through words alone. So just to recap,
Mhm.
your big question might be the catalyst for your need for deeper self-discovery. So journaling prompts and those little exercises might help you be inspired.
So thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and sign up for our email list. We'll be back next week with more insights and, of course, a brand new journaling prompt and bonus exercise.